I'm Crystal Sutherland, the Senior Program Manager. Maite Kako is also on the call, who's our Program Manager. We have our Director, Nicole Atong. She's also very instrumental in our program, of course, and she's a source of information should you need to reach out to her. Okay, so the FIU Embrace Education Program offers two options for adults with intellectual and/or developmental disabilities. So we have an option for students who are non-degree seeking students, and we have an option for students that are degree seeking students. And this is a new option for the program. That is the program for degree seeking students. That's something that we've started in the past academic year to be able to support students that are FIU students in a degree seeking track that need additional supports. And I'm going to go into greater detail, of course. Okay, so our FIU Embrace program for degree seeking students. As I mentioned, this is a program that serves FIU students with a developmental disability, including autism. And these are students that need supports beyond those offered through the university's Disability Resource Center. So for those of you that aren't familiar, FIU has a Disability Resource Center that provides resources for any student at FIU that has a disability. And we do have students that are enrolled in classes at FIU, degree seeking classes, these students need more assistance. So they need more assistance, for instance, with maybe the social piece or with tracking assignments, tracking tasks, getting to classes, etc., organizing themselves to be successful on campus. So it's not that these students do not have the capacity to do a degree. They absolutely do have the capacity. They just need additional wraparound supports for them to be successful on campus. And that is the additional arm that FIU Embrace Education offers for these degree-seeking students. The students that are enrolled in our degree-seeking track must, however, satisfy all the requirements of their chosen undergraduate degree program. And by that, what I mean is this. The student, for instance, if it is a student that wants to do, let's say, a degree in marketing, they would have to satisfy whatever requirements FIU outlines as the requirement to enter that marketing degree program. Or if it is that the student wants to, for instance, do an engineering degree, they have to first satisfy whatever requirements it is that FIU has for that engineering program. Once they have satisfied those requirements and they're accepted by FIU, then they apply to FIU Embrace Education degree seeking program to receive the additional supports that they would need to be successful on campus. So some of the criteria that I have listed here, as I mentioned, they need proof of acceptance in this degree seeking program, right? They must have a minimum of 2 years remaining in their degree seeking program. And one of the reasons why students need to have a minimum of 2 years remaining is because the program, of course, has programmatic components that the students will need sufficient time to complete. And as I go through slides later on, you'll see what some of the activities are within this program. The student, of course, has to have a documented developmental disability, which may include ASD. And the student has to demonstrate the ability to function independently without supervision. So FIU is a large campus. FIU is a university. And while it is that we do offer supports to the students, we aren't following our students around for every single minute of the day that they're on campus, right? Our students don't have aides. So the students still need to be able to exercise some level of independence on the campus while we work with them on building their independent living skills in other areas. This is not an exhaustive list of what is required for the degree seeking program. That exhaustive list, will be included on the application package, which I will be sending out after this presentation. What I have pulled here and I'm discussing here are some of the key ones or the major ones that parents tend to ask questions about. Of course, if it is that you receive the application package and you have questions, by all means, definitely reach out. We're more than willing and happy to explain in greater detail if it is that you do need additional explanation having received the information. Okay, our FIU Embrace non-degree seeking program. This is the more popular program. This is the one that we tend to get a lot more calls about, and this is the one that we've had going on for several years. So we've had a program redesign, so it looks very different from what persons are familiar with, which is why it's important for us to have these open houses to ensure that the community is aware of the changes. So our non-degree seeking program, it's a 3-year program. It's a certificate program. It's an inclusive program on campus for students between the ages of 18 to 28. And these are our students with intellectual disabilities and or autism. So we're speaking about the students that, of course, they definitely have the capacity to learn, but this is not a student that would be able to successfully do a degree seeking program at the university. So these students are auditing classes. And by auditing classes, what I mean is that they're going to FIU classes with their typical peers. They're participating in the full spectrum of the class. So they're going to the classes, they're participating in the group work, they're doing the assignments, they're doing the exams to the best of their ability. They're not getting a grade at the end of it. It's not something that's going to be counted towards a GPA. They're doing the best work that they can do in these classes with the supports that are offered by FIU Embrace, as well as the supports that are offered through the university's Disability Resource Center. And at the end of it all, the students are, as a means of gauging what they've learned, they have the opportunity to do micro-credentials. They also have the opportunity to participate in taking industry level certifications in the areas that they have chosen to study. So these students in the non-degree seeking program are not degree seeking students, as I've mentioned, but they have different areas of specialization that they're able to do the program in. So for instance, when the student comes into the program, we don't expect them in the first semester of the program to know the area of specialization or to make a decision regarding what it is that they want to study. In that first semester of the program, what they're really getting is exposure to determine how they want to move forward. But some of the areas of specialization that we do have for our non-degree seeking students includes hospitality, we have technology. I'm going to ask Maite to jump in and help me because I'm drawing a blank.
We have digital communication.
Corporate communication is another one.
Corporate communication, well. Right.
Okay,
and then
so
we have sterilization technician, some of the hospital and OR tech. We have some of the hospital ones too.
And animation is another popular one as well. That's something that a lot of our students do want to do their area of specialization in. Thanks so much, Maite. I'm so sorry for putting you on the spot like that. So those are some of the areas that our students want to do their program in. And we continue building this program based on the needs of the community, the needs of our students, and the feedback that we do get from the students and the parents, as well as persons on campus that are aware of our program. So as I mentioned, these are some of the areas of specialization that we have currently, but we continue to build on the list based on the needs and the demands of the community. So the primary goal of the program is to offer this comprehensive integrated university experience and education for our students, a program that's inclusive, a program that's accessible, and really provides an opportunity for our students to be able to gain meaningful employment when they leave the university, just like typical students do. We want them to be able to have these goals and to have the skill set to be able to achieve these goals once they leave the program. And we also want our students to be able to live independently in the community and to be as prepared as possible for this independent living based on how independent living is determined by the student. So we do have some students that for them, they just want to be more independent in the home with their parents. So they want to have more responsibilities. And we do have some students where their goal is to live outside of the home, whether it's living in a shared apartment situation, whether it's living in an apartment by themselves. So students have different independent living goals. And while we have the education arm of the program and we work with them on the employment piece, we're also working with our students on preparing themselves for independent living in the community, more independence of parents, and being ready to take on this task, having graduated from the program. Go ahead,
So
Maite.
can you talk a little bit about, for the non-degree seeking program, when we talk about that it's a completely integrated program, what the students have to be able to do to be successful as far as independence on campus and class, and being in a classroom?
Okay, sure. So as I mentioned before, our students do not have aides. So our students need to be able to manage being on a university campus without somebody constantly directing their day. So our students need to be able to get to these classes, which are located on various points on the campus. Of course, we do understand that the campus is large. So for the first few weeks of the semester, we do make preparations for our students to be walked to these classes, to be able to identify the various locations. So it is our expectation that after the students do pass this initial hump of figuring out what the locations are, that they're going to be able to navigate the campus, get to their classes, sit through these classes, which can be anywhere from an hour to 2 hours, 2.5 hours, right? So sit through the classes, pay attention, not disturb the rest of the class, right? Understanding like appropriate classroom behaviors. It's a college campus, and while we do have other things on the agenda, and I'll go through a student's typical schedule in future slides, it's not a fully compact back-to-back day like a typical high school day is. So there are gaps of time throughout the day that the student may not have a structured class or seminar or meeting. And what that means is that the students that are in our program have to be able to manage their free time. Of course, we give ideas. There are different things that students do on campus, but as students will not have a schedule that's going to be 7:30 through to 2:30 with every hour accounted for in the way that a high school schedule is structured, right? We do expect that our students will understand how to be safe on campus, right? Knowing that they have to adhere to the rules of the campus, which is something that we ensure that the students are aware of what these rules are, and also knowing who are the persons to communicate to if it is that there's something that needs to be reported. And I'll get a bit more into this as we go along. Maite, I'm not sure if I answered what it is that you were hoping at. Okay, great. So eligibility criteria for our non-degree seeking students. Of course, the student needs to have a documented intellectual disability and or autism. The student must have exited high school, and there is documentation to show that the student has exited that high school, whether it's a diploma, special diploma. There are some situations, for instance, where a family is applying and the family may be applying now, let's say in January, and the student isn't going to exit high school until the end of this academic year, so May, June, thereabout. But our application deadline, which is in February, is before the student has actually exited high school. So one of the big questions that I tend to get from parents is, oh, I don't have the proof as yet that my son or daughter has exited high school, but at the time that the program begins in the fall, they would have already exited high school. Just to answer that question ahead of time, what we tell the parents to do is to get a letter from the school to say that my son will be exiting high school in June of 2022. So therefore, by the time they start the program, if they're accepted in the fall, they would have already exited at that time. Go ahead, Maite.
And that they are on schedule to meet all graduation requirements.
Thank you. Correct. Okay, so the students in the non-degree seeking program must have the legal authority to make decisions that would allow them to fully participate in the program. So of course, this speaks to guardianship. So if it is that the student has a full guardianship in place, which means that the student cannot make any decisions independent of the parents or independent of whoever it is that has the guardianship, then it would mean that this student would not be eligible for the program. The student has to be able to make the decisions that would allow them to fully participate in the program. And some of these decisions, of course, would be decisions surrounding education, right? The student has to be able to choose their own classes. Classes are being chosen. This is a discussion that's had with the student and the program. This is not a discussion that's had with the parents, because these are college students. And this is the level of independence and autonomy that we're promoting in the students in this program. Our students have to be able to make their own decision regarding social activities, their own decision regarding travel. There are various opportunities for travel in the program, not necessarily far away, it depends on what's happening, right? But we may have something with grocery and the students need to go to the grocery store. And these are decisions that the students have to make independently. When it comes to guardianship, this is another area that we tend to get a lot of questions from parents, just because each situation may be a little bit different. And I would encourage persons to reach out via email to ask your questions. Do not be afraid to ask the questions. If it is that you do have a question that you'd like to ask, or if it is that you need additional clarity regarding this specific piece as you prepare the application for your son or daughter. As I mentioned, the program is for persons 18 through to 28, but it's a 3-year program. So the person needs to be the oldest 25 on admission to the program. And of course, we have a psychological and adaptive testing that's done as a part of our application process. And this is mandatory all persons who have applied and have progressed through the application process to that stage. Just like my discussion with the degree seeking students and their eligibility criteria, please note that this is not an exhaustive list. The full list will be included on the application package that I'm going to share. What I have pulled out here are just the ones that we have realized tend to be, these are the ones that parents tend to ask a lot more questions on. So I definitely wanted to talk a bit more about those today before I share the application package with everyone. Okay, program components, academic classes for both degree seeking students and or non-degree seeking students. The FIU classes are a large part of what students participating in the program. As I mentioned, our non-degree seeking students are doing these for audit. So they're not credit bearing and they're going to the classes, they're participating in all components to the best of their ability. What's important for me to share, I totally forgot before, was that we as a department, we maintain a relationship with the instructors and the professors of these classes. And what I mean by that is that at the beginning of the semester, we send out a communication to the instructors for all the classes that our students are enrolled in to let them know about our program. So we introduce FIU Embrace to them, tell them what FIU Embrace is about, what our program is about, informing them that there is a student in the class. We don't tell them who the student is. We let them know that there is a student in the class. And if it is that they have an issue with said student or they have questions that they want clarification on, they can definitely reach out to us. What we then do is we have the students send communication to the professors to close that loop, to let the professor know, for instance, hey, my name is Crystal Sutherland. I'm an FIU Embrace student. This is what FIU Embrace is about. This is my program team. My program team includes Maite, Lindsay, Crystal, Nicole. This is their contact information. I am supposed to be receiving accommodations, and the accommodations that I'm receiving are, for instance, extended time to take a test. I need a note taker, things like that, right? Do ensure that the professors know who our students are. So if anything comes up, our professors reach out to us. There's program advising. So for our degree seeking students, they would seek the typical advising that is offered for all degree seeking students across the campus. But what we do for those students is that a member of the FIU Embrace team accompanies those students to that meeting to ensure that the students are able to advocate for themselves, to ensure that they're asking the appropriate questions, and to ensure that the information that is being relayed to these degree seeking students is broken down in a way that they're able to comprehend, to understand, and to really make steps towards what their next steps would be. For our non-degree seeking students, program advising is done through FIU Embrace. So we work with the students to ensure that they're understanding what their area of specialization is, and they're understanding what the requirements are for that area of specialization. And we guide them to ensure that they're taking the appropriate classes to meet the required goals to earn that area of specialization, and to also earn any micro credentials or any certifications, industry level certifications, etc., that they could possibly get in this area of specialization. So for instance, if you have a student that's doing like technology or animation, you want to ensure that they're on track to achieve, let's say, their Adobe certification, or they're probably doing something for Publisher or Microsoft Suite, that kind of thing. So you want to ensure that they're understanding what it is that they need to do to get where they need to go. We have volunteer hours that we do work with our students to get hours and to link them to different areas in the community where they're able to volunteer. This tends to be a struggle for our students just because the social piece is an overall struggle for the students. But we do have social mentors, and a few bullet points down, I do have social mentor meetings. I'll kind of use that to explain right now. So we have social mentors who are employed by our department to work with our students to ensure that they're able to navigate the social piece of being on campus and off campus. So these are undergraduate students, undergraduate FIU students around the same age as the students within our program. And they work with the students to get them to make these kind of social plans without their parents, right? So we're not trying to set up play dates or anything like that, but it's really helping them to find themselves on campus. So what are you interested in? What clubs are available for to suit your interests? How do you join these clubs? Okay, do you need somebody to go with you the first day you go to the club to ensure that you're comfortable, you figure it out? So social mentors work with them on that. A lot of our students have varying interests. For instance, we do have a few students that love movies, and whenever there's a Marvel movie out, they really want to go and see this. But how do you go to the movies without your parents planning to go to the movies with you, right? So the social mentor works with them on that. And then in going to the movie, you have to figure out how you're going to pay for it and the budgeting piece. So those are some of the things that the social mentor works with the students on, and for them to figure out, like transportation. So if it is that your parents are taking you, then how is it that you're going to make those arrangements with your parents? But can you Uber? Okay, so let's figure out Uber, right? Or are you going to take the bus? So that kind of thing. We have faculty mentor meetings. That's another mandatory piece of the student's schedule, or a mandatory component of the program rather. And our faculty mentors are basically faculty and sometimes staff across campus that have been recruited by the program. Some of them found us, some of them we found, and they are trained to work with our students in the capacity of mentors. So they work with our students on their goals, their life goals or short-term goals, and it depends on the student and how it is that they can work towards achieving these goals. And these are one-on-one meetings with the student and the specific mentor that's independent of us. And there are academic mentors. And the academic mentors, it's also a mandatory component of the program. And when I speak about academic mentors, I want you to imagine tutors, right? So these are basically tutors who are undergraduate FIU students employed by FIU Embrace, trained by FIU Embrace, and they work with our students in a one-on-one capacity to assist them with the academic piece in the program. So checking their emails, finding where their classes are, responding to emails, going through assignments, prepping for exams, communicating with professors, going to get their textbooks. As I mentioned, it's a mandatory meeting. So all our students do get academic mentoring, and they receive mentoring at a minimum of 3 hours per week. There are some students that do not need more than 3 hours. And there are other students that will need more than 3 hours. And as I mentioned, it's a minimum of 3 for everyone. But then on a needs basis, there are some students that do receive an additional few hours depending on the classes that they're enrolled in for the semester and depending on the needs of the students. The academic mentoring, the social mentoring, the volunteering, all of that, that's for degree seeking and or non-degree seeking students as well. So job shadowing and internship. So as I mentioned before, one of the primary goals of the program is for our students to be able to gain meaningful employment when they exit the program. So one of the ways that we ensure that our students are able to gain meaningful employment is by ensuring that during the time that they're in the program, they're building on the skills that you need to be employed. So it's one piece to have the education and to have the certifications, etc. But there are a lot of soft skills that our students really need to work on to ensure that they're able to successfully manage in a work environment. So for instance, understanding how to follow a schedule, being on time, communicating with a supervisor, understanding that if you're running late, it's not mom and dad that's going to call to tell us that, oh, I'm going to be 15 minutes late, right? Understanding that the responsibility is yours when you're in a work environment to communicate that with the employer to let them know that you're going to be late. So when our students start in the first year of the program, in their second semester, we start them with job shadowing. And in job shadowing, they're matched to a site that's on campus, somewhere at FIU. And they can be at the site for a minimum of, let's say, 5 hours, right? Depending on the student. And something that we really want parents to understand, and something that we spend a lot of time trying to get the students to explain, the first site that you're matched to isn't necessarily your dream job, right? We're working on skills that we want our students to develop until they get to the point of exiting the program, where they can try to get whatever job it is that they're qualified to get, and whatever job it is that they have the skill set to execute. So for instance, we do have students that will come into the program that they're interested in doing animation, for instance. And we know that this particular student struggles a lot with being on time and following certain instructions, and the students may get very overwhelmed easily. So maybe we have a site that's not a high traffic site, a site that's a little more slower paced, with a supervisor that has worked with our program and worked with our students for a very long time. And maybe we'll match a student to that site for 5 hours, and we're working on these specific skills, which are not necessarily animation skills, but they're still important skills that a student needs to have in order to be successful in a place of employment, right? There is a job coach that's a part of our team that works with the student and serves as that, I guess you could say, the buffer or the bridge between the supervisor and the student, right? And helping the student to develop skills, etc. There is the dorm experience. So we do have a residential component of our program that's offered to students that have completed the first year of the program. In a few slides, I'll go in a bit more detail on the residential components of the program. But before I go further, one of the questions that I usually get is this mandatory? It is not mandatory, right? Your son or daughter does not have to live in the dorms. It is something that most of our students want to do. A lot of times the parents don't want it, but I can tell you a lot of our students do want to live in the dorms. But it's also an application process as well. And I'll go into that in greater detail later. Maite?
So I think it's important to note, though, that we've noticed that our students that go into the dorms tend to become much more independent and acquire much more independent skills than those who don't, just because their experience in the dorm forces them to do that. So they have to live, in a dorm with 400 other, neurotypical students, and they have to kind of engage socially somewhat in certain things. And there's certain things that they need to figure out in the dorm. So it's important to note that the students that do live in the dorm tend to be more independent at the end of the program than those that don't have the experience.
Okay, great. Thanks, Maite.
Yeah.
Okay. I mentioned student clubs before, which is social mentors assist our students with. And we also have independent living skills seminars, which are mandatory for all students in our program. And these seminars, there are 3 seminars a week. And the seminars focus on, as the name suggests, different skills that our students need to live independently. And these skills are anywhere from sex and relationships, general health. We're talking about budgeting. We're talking about travel. We're talking about voting, a wide array of topics, right? And there are times when our students will come to us with topics that they're interested in discussing. And we meet as a group, right, as managers, and we determine how it is that we could incorporate this as a part of our independent living skills discussion. So for instance, to give an example, a few years ago, we had a student that was very interested in getting his driver's license. At the time, that was not a part of curriculum, but we found a way to integrate this to ensure that the students had the necessary information in that year group to be able to go out and do what they needed to do to get their driver's license. So the independent living skills seminars are mandatory for all students, regardless of the topics that we're discussing. And there are some topics that are a little bit more difficult than other topics, but it's something that all students must participate in. Self-advocacy is another big one. And speaking about your disability and advocating for yourself and understanding what accommodations you need and what it is that you need to be successful are some of the ones that are a little bit more difficult, but are definitely useful for our students. Peer mentors, that's another component of the program. So basically think about the peer mentors like a buddy system. So having gone through the program for at least a year, a student becomes eligible to apply to be trained as a peer mentor. And of course, as a part of the eligibility criteria, you have to be a successful student in the program, right? So we would never have a student that's been skipping classes and not doing what they need to do. We wouldn't pair that student with a new incoming student as a peer mentor, right? We're looking for our students that have successfully navigated the program. Not that we're not expecting challenges, of course. We do have various challenges that our students go through during the first year, but having applied to be a peer mentor and been selected, you're then matched to a new incoming student, and you're really there to assist the student with navigating the campus as well. So in those first few weeks when we have our new students on campus, they don't know anybody, they're kind of alone. We don't want them eating lunch by themselves. They don't really know how to find like the restrooms. Staff may have shown you how to get to classes, but you still get a little lost. So it's great when you have that peer mentor, somebody that's your age, that's also an Embrace student. You can know that, okay, Maite is my peer. I have her cell number. I can give her a call. I can have lunch with Maite. We can hang out during our free time. And it's really beneficial to the students, and it helps them to form those friendships and to form those bonds until they've really gained their roots on campus and become really familiar with the campus. Physical activity as well is encouraged. We now have FIU's Special Olympics team. So some of our students just this past week started the basketball team. They're super excited about that. We have a gym on campus. Something important to note is that our students in FIU Embrace, they are FIU Panthers. Our students have Panther IDs and they're eligible to participate and to use any facility on campus as long as it's not something that's restricted to a degree seeking student or to a student in a specific program, right? So for instance, FIU has a wonderful gym with a lot of equipment, a lot of classes. There's personal training available at a cost for students that want to have that one-on-one personal training, but for other students who just want to go into the gym, there's Zumba classes, there are spinning classes, there just typical, just going in and using the equipment, that kind of thing. So physical activity is something that's definitely encouraged in the program. Right now with the pandemic for the past, I guess we can say 2 years now, for the past 2 years, we haven't really had conference and travel. But pre-pandemic, this was definitely a component of the program. There would be travel that required overnight stay, either out of state or further north within the state. And that would be also a component of the program. And this would be travel without the parents, right? With program staff, of course, but without the parents, and students would have an opportunity to go to these conferences independently, participate, do presentations at times, etc. So that really is an explanation of our program components. This slide that I'm bringing up now speaks to our program support. Some of them I have spoken to before, so I won't need to go in as much detail. But as I mentioned, we have a job coach that's employed by FIU Embrace that works to provide support to our students in the employment opportunities that they're placed in the program, and also supporting them in identifying employment when they're exiting the program. We have our peer mentors. I already explained the peer mentors, the academic mentors, or social mentors, and our faculty mentors. Of course, we have our team of program managers that I introduced at the beginning of the call. So there is me, Crystal, the senior program manager. Maite, you've been seeing her face and hearing her voice. She's one of our program managers as well. And Nicole, as our director, is never far away. She's available to all students. She has an open door policy and a great relationship with the students. So our students definitely know where to find us and how to reach us if it is that they do need us, and same for the parents, right? The parents are definitely welcome to reach out to us at any time. We have program coordinators as well, and each cohort has a program coordinator that is assigned to that cohort, right? So, and the program coordinators are the ones that assist the students in building their schedules, identifying these classes, doing that program advising, that kind of thing. The FIU's Disability Resource Center, this serves the entire campus and also our students. And this, as I mentioned, is for any student on the campus that needs an accommodation with any disability that the student may have. So let's say, for instance, you have a student that is visually impaired and probably needs some assistance with software to be successful in the class. The Disability Resource Center is where the student would go to register this disability and to be able to ensure that the professors are aware of the accommodations that the students need to be successful in the class. A piece that I need to add is that the Disability Resource Center also communicates with the professors. So I mentioned that an email is sent by me to the professors to let them know that there's a student in the class. Another communication that goes to all professors and instructors is through the Disability Resource Center. So let's say, for instance, I'm registered to receive services from FIU's Disability Resource Center. I have provided documentation to the DRC to let them know what my specific disability is, right? I provide them with the documentation. And just so you know, parents, this is a meeting that we assist our students with. We do not send our students, whether it's a degree-seeking student or a non-degree seeking student, to this meeting independently, right? We're there to support them and to ensure that they're receiving the services that they need and they're able to advocate for themselves as best as possible. The student provides the documentation that is necessary, and they have the meeting with the DRC explaining some of the assistance or the accommodations that they will need. So let's say the student is Crystal. Crystal has the meeting, and at the end of the meeting, with the support of Embrace staff, we have determined that Crystal needs extended time for her exams. She needs extended time for her assignments. She needs a note taker in all her classes. And she also needs, let's say, a specific software that does text to audio, right, on her laptop to be able to get the information that she needs. Then what Crystal will do is tell the DRC the classes that she's registered to take for the semester and the name of the professor that's teaching that class. What the DRC then does is sends the professor an official document to say, Crystal is registered to take your class. These are the supports that Crystal must receive to be successful in your class. So that's another way that we close the loop to ensure that our students are receiving all the supports that they do need. Okay, what are some of the responsibilities and expectations of our students? Regardless of the program that our students are in, whether degree seeking or non-degree seeking, it is our expectation, of course, that our students will comply with all university policies, including FIU Student Code of Conduct. Our students are not exempt from the rules of FIU overall, right? All our students are FIU Panthers and must adhere to every rule that governs all students on campus. In order to ensure that our students do understand FIU's Code of Conduct, it's a pretty hefty document, so we don't expect that our students are going to sit and read and understand this independently, right? So what we do is that, I mentioned that seminars are mandatory. One of the first seminars that's held at the beginning of the academic year is focused on student code of conduct and ensuring that that information is broken down for our students to be able to understand. It is our students' responsibility to participate in all aspects of the program. And I already discussed what the various aspects of the program are. To communicate with program staff for assistance to resolve challenges on campus. So we understand that our students are accustomed to communicating with their parents to have issues resolved, but it's a university campus, right? And we're moving our students or adult students towards independence. So we need to get our students into the habit of understanding that they need to communicate the challenge they're having with the appropriate persons who are able to assist them with the challenges. And a challenge at FIU is easier resolved by FIU staff than by parents at home. However, it is not that as staff, we don't communicate with parents, right? So we do make sure parents are informed when they need to be informed, but we ask parents to ensure that they redirect the students to us when it is that they need to have an issue resolved on campus. Of course, we expect that our students are going to be checking their emails daily to ensure that they're receiving all the information that they need to receive. That's the primary way that we communicate with students, and that the university in general communicates with students. And to ensure that they're collaborating with the program staff to secure employment and to excel in these different places that they're placed in. And of course, it goes without saying, remaining professional, courteous, solution-oriented, respectful while on campus with staff, with other students, etc. And then there are some responsibilities and expectations that we have for the parents or the guardians of the students in our program, right? So understand that the staff will be communicating directly with students regarding programmatic activities and decisions. This is a program for adult students. I've said it before, we're working on our students towards independence. Our students need to be the ones to make the decisions, to think about some of the decisions that they're making. So we will primarily communicate with the students. It's not that we don't speak to parents. We definitely will loop in parents on conversations and big decisions, etc. But something like choosing a class is a discussion that will be had with the students and not the parents. We want the students, or let me not say we want, the students must be the ones to log in and check their own emails, right? Parents must not ask students for their passwords, log into their FIU emails, send emails on behalf of the students, etc. That is an absolute no-no and goes against university policy. We want our parents to support the students in independence, right? Encourage them to be independent, redirect them where necessary, and acknowledge that as staff, we retain the right to make certain administrative decisions with the students regarding the day-to-day management of the program. And then the last main one really is we expect that parents will attend meetings or seminars that we have that are geared towards the success of the students in our program. Okay, the application process is a pretty lengthy document. There are recommendations that are part of the document as well. So it is not an application that you can just sit by yourself and complete it, right? There are recommendation letters that you'd have to ask specific persons for. A copy of an old psychological also needed to be submitted as a part of the application. The completed application packages must be submitted either via postal mail, electronic mail, or dropped off in person. And any incomplete application that is submitted will not be considered for admission. As I mentioned, it's a lengthy process, but when we receive documents, we do acknowledge receipt of these documents, and we do maintain communication with families to ensure that persons are aware of what they've submitted and what is outstanding if this is the case.
I think it's important to note too that we understand that this transition into FIU Embrace, should your son or daughter be accepted into the program, is a huge transition, not just for the students, but usually the most difficult transition is for the parents, because we really push the students to be independent, to make independent decisions. In our experience, a lot of our students have never had to do that. They've never had to select their classes. They've never had to do a lot of the things, a lot of the independent things that they need to do as being part of the program. So we have worked with FIU's Center for Children and Families, psychologists that work with us from CCF, as we call it, and they've developed something called the STEP program, which is the Student Transition into the Embrace program. So for those students who are accepted into the program, it's kind of like a parent support group where parents who choose to participate in that, and the meetings are virtual, kind of have an open discussion with other parents whose students are currently in the program, and they share their experiences with the psychologists and the graduate assistants that work there, to share their experiences on maybe some of the difficulties that have happened in transition. Completely anonymous thing, because they only report back to us kind of like what not individual parents say, but these are the issues that have been brought up that parents are concerned about. And then on the back end, we would kind of go up and follow up in general with parents and say, we understand this is a concern, and stuff like that. But parents that have participated in the STEP program have been very happy with that, because they've been able to share resources and experience with other parents that, you know, everybody's kind of going through their own struggle, but together it seems to be a little bit easier to manage. So I just want to share that we do have that available for students who are accepted into the program. That is something that's available to parents. It's not mandatory, but it is a resource that has worked pretty well in the last academic year. Crystal, maybe now would be a good time to pause, maybe to see if anybody has questions before we, I don't know what you think, before we move on to the next step, because you've given a lot of information.
Okay, sure. Thanks for that prompt, Maite. Sure. So let me see if there are any questions in the chat. Also, if anyone wants to unmute at this time to ask a question.
So we do have some questions popping up in the chat now in regard to the incomplete application. So what that means is that we have an application deadline. If you submit the application early, then we'll be able to tell you, okay, this is missing, and you have until the deadline date to complete it. But most of the time when we get applications, things are missing. Parents fill out, for instance, there's an immunization form that must be the immunization form used by FIU. FIU, not FIU Embrace, does not accept anything that's not that. If that's not submitted, it's not complete. We can't move forward with the application. As long as all of the documents are in by the deadline, then we can move forward with the process. This is an application process, meaning that just like when you apply to college, you can apply to 10 colleges and maybe only get into one. This is the same type of thing. Just because somebody meets the minimum criteria of the program does not necessarily mean that they would be offered an admission, because we need to make sure that it's a match. And that's based on many different things, including the results of the psychological and the adaptive scores. We need to make sure that students that are going to be in the program can be safe on campus and things like that. Financial aid process. So all of the students that are in FIU Embrace are eligible for Division of Vocational Rehab Services. And so the first thing we would encourage you to do, even if your son or daughter is not interested in coming into Embrace, would be to apply to your local vocational rehab office for services, as vocational rehab will cover a minimum of 20% of tuition fees and all that stuff, and a maximum of 100%, and that's based on household income. That's a place to start. The next question would be, if my son does not have job experience or volunteer hours, then you could just write that in the application. But there's 3 recommendation forms as part of the application. If he doesn't have job experience or volunteer hours, then reach out to us to see if you can submit maybe 2 education recommendations instead of a vocational one. But also think about if he's done any community service or anything like that. I don't know, Nicole, if you have anything else to add on the financial aid piece.
Crystal, I would suggest you go through the different pots of money that families can draw down from, including Center for
Unique Abilities.
Right. So that's what I would suggest.
Okay, sure. Thanks, Nicole. So as Maite mentioned, there is a program fee. The details of the program fee will be sent in the documents that I'm going to send after the open house. And the reason being is that the fee is going to be dependent on the specific program that you're applying for. So whether or not your son or daughter is applying for the FIU Embrace degree seeking program, or if it is that they're applying for the non-degree seeking program, right? So there is a program fee. In addition to the program fee, there's also the cost, the tuition cost, which is the FIU tuition cost, which is dependent on the specific classes that your son or daughter would be enrolled in. So of course, you know that FIU, like every other university, charges per credit. So if it is that your son or daughter is enrolled in, let's say, a 3-credit class versus a 1-credit class. So one source of funding, as Maite mentioned, is vocational rehab. Right now in our program, all the students that we currently have in our program are vocational rehab clients, and they're being supported between 20% to 100%, depending on families' income and the other ways that VR assesses and determines how it is that they're going to support the students. In addition to that, there are various scholarships and grants available through different funding sources. And we will, of course, steer families to the different funding sources depending on their eligibility. One of them includes Center for Unique,
the Florida Center for Students with Unique Abilities.
Thank you, Maite. is one of the sources of funding that's available for our students. Students are also available for eligible for Pell Grants and
So
different.
They're
Go ahead,
asking,
Maite.
so they're asking to repeat that. So the Florida Center for Students with Unique Abilities provides scholarship specifically for students that have intellectual disabilities. They must have an intellectual disability to receive that source of funding. But as Crystal mentioned, all of the students in our program are VR clients, vocational rehab clients, and also they will be eligible for Pell Grants and other types of scholarships. Crystal, there's another question here that says, when my son finishes high school, does the IEP go with my son to FIU Embrace? No, the IEP does not come into Embrace. Embrace is a college. It's a college. There is no IEP here. What we would do is, as part of the application process, if you submit the IEP, then we would know what types of accommodations your son might need should he be accepted into the program. And part of the psychological evaluation that we're going to do anyway would look at some of the supports that would be needed and make recommendations for accommodations or additional supports that the applicants would need.
If I could jump in here, because I want to clarify some of the ways in which families could draw down money, right? There are multiple ways. We've set up the program so that students and families could draw down dollars from different pots of money in the community to be able to fund the program. So I just want to repeat a few things. Any student with an intellectual disability, they can have other types of disabilities, but an intellectual disability can draw down $7,000 a year from Center for Unique Abilities. We do all the paperwork. There is nothing you have to do. Whatever we don't use, we are required to send it back. This is a state mandated program, and it's open to students who have an intellectual disabilities. Students, we will work with the families to help students become VR clients. Voc Rehab pays for tuition fees and our program fee. As Maite was alluding to, Voc Rehab will pay anywhere from 100% of the program to the least they would pay is 20%. And of course, it's income driven. And yes, they do take into account the income of the parents living with the individual. That's how it's calculated. The other thing is we do go out and raise money, and we do have a pot of money for scholarships, which is a private donor that has given us money. So if there is a need, we can backfill that gap through the scholarship. We have a group of people that must approve it internally before we can do that. We cannot apply from the private donor. We cannot apply any money to any meal plans or dorms. That private donor was very, very careful to say it could only go to tuition fees, that sort of stuff, right? The last thing is that to know is that we are a Florida approved program. So we have that level of accreditation, if you will, in Florida, and we are submitting our applications to become a federally approved program. And this is about 6 weeks to 2 months. Once we get that, all students then would be available to use Pell Grants. This is separate from financial loans. We try to encourage family members not to do a loan, but to draw down other kinds of monies. Some family members have put aside dollars into the Florida prepaid or to a 50 whatever B, I think. I can't remember the account that is strictly used for to fund college or some post-secondary education training facility. We can use those dollars. What we do is we work with each individual families to make sure that they are drawing down the dollars that the state offers before dipping into Florida prepaid or anything else like that. So I know it's a little complicated, but we've tried to open as many avenues as possible that will allow families to draw down dollars that's available in the state. And I'm just going to leave it there.
Nicole, there was one more. The last question was, do we apply now for these scholarships, or would you guide us as students are accepted?
So we would, as we're moving through the application process, there is a time where if we feel that, yes, we're going to, at a stage where we say yes to the candidate, what we do is we immediately start working with the family member and the candidate to make sure that they become a VR client. That's the first thing we do. With respect to drawing down the $7,000 annually from Florida Center for Unique Abilities, there is nothing family members have to do. That is all the paperwork on the institution side. Maite, myself, handles that, and our financial aid office. So our scholarship office. So there's nothing really for families to do. You'll just see the amounts applying to the accounts. I would say to you, if you have individual questions about funding, we could schedule a call to respond to those. More importantly, I would suggest that you focus on doing the application, getting that in correctly, making sure you have all parts of the application turned in. And then what we can do is begin to really work through with you how the program would be covered. Now, other than the pots of money that we talked about, either through Crystal, Maite, or myself, there is not another funding mechanism that I know of. However, if a family member knows of something else, we will move quickly to make it available to everyone. So just let us know.
I think
Thank you
also,
so much,
Nicole, sorry, Crystal, important to note is that it would be good for families to apply for VR services anyway, because VR offers a lot of job training and additional referrals to other programs also, should this not be a good match for the family. So, and there's a lot of pre-employment training and support available for VR clients. So I think, Crystal, maybe we should send the link to the VR offices when we send out the email today, so people can just start getting in touch with them, and if they need assistance after that, they can reach out to us too.
Sure, not a problem. Thanks, Nicole. Thanks, Maite, for jumping in. Okay, I don't think we have any more questions, so I'm going to advance the slides, okay? Some of the slides I'm going to skip through quickly, because in my discussion previously, I would have already gone through a lot of the information that I intended to discuss at this point in the conversation. So academic engagement, we have a computer lab, which is specifically for our FIU Embrace students, which I did not mention before. And in that computer lab, our students have the opportunity to work one-on-one with those academic mentors that I had mentioned previously, to complete the different academic pieces that they need to complete to be successful on campus. It is not that our students cannot use the other facilities of the wider university. They absolutely can. Well, we do have this space that's reserved and identified for our students, where they're able to really have these meetings for as long as they need to meet with these individuals. As I mentioned, our academic mentors really support the students with everything that they need support with on campus, where academics is concerned, and our academic mentors report to one of our program coordinators and receive support from the coordinators weekly. Our parents do not engage with our academic mentors. Our academic mentors engage directly with program staff. If it is that a parent, for instance, has a concern where an academic mentor is concerned, or any of our student staff, then of course the concern would go to, for instance, me as one of the program managers, or any other program manager on the team, or directly to Nicole if it is that the parent prefers to do so. So what I have here is a sample schedule for a student that's in our non-degree seeking program. And the reason why I'm, our degree seeking program, I'll speak over after, but let me talk now about a sample schedule for a non-degree seeking program. So I had mentioned before that our students' times aren't, it isn't blocked out in the way that a high school time is blocked out, where there's something for students to do every single day. So as you can see, for instance, on this sample, I said this is a sample, we have, for the most part, none of our students have the same schedule for the entire semester, right? Because our students are engaged in different classes, they meet with their academic mentors at different times, they meet with all their mentors at different times, and they have seminars with their cohort. So year 1 students have seminars together, but they do not have seminars with year 3 students. So for this particular student, you can see on a Monday, the student has his peer mentor time at 8 a.m. and the student doesn't have another activity on their schedule until 12 o'clock when they have the writing and rhetoric class. And this is a typical FIU class that serves all FIU students. And then this student has another activity at 2 o'clock. So what tends to happen is that the schedule goes out before the semester, and then I may get a call from a parent to say, hey, my daughter Maite, she has a class at 8 o'clock and she doesn't have anything until 12 o'clock. Oh my God, I don't know what she's going to do between this time. Can you just change up her schedule to allow her to have the peer mentor right behind the peer mentor? If she could have that writing class, and then right behind that class, she could have faculty mentor, and then I could just pick her up right after so that she doesn't have this gap in time. But that's not really how college works, right? So the answer would be no. This is what her schedule looks like. So what we're going to work on this semester is teaching Maite how to manage that large gap in time between 9 a.m. to 12 p.m., right? That's what we're going to work with Maite on in this particular semester. So, okay, Maite, when you get out of class at 9 a.m., what are you going to do until 12, right? And bear in mind that, you have to think about lunch. So can you make it to 1 o'clock to have your lunch after that writing class? Or are you going to have an early lunch? Maybe you're going to have an early lunch at 11 o'clock. To ensure that you're full and ready to learn at 12 o'clock. Do you want to go to the library? Do you want to hang out? Do you want to go to the gym during this time? Maybe you just really want to hang out with friends and chat and just do your own college thing until it's time to get to these classes. Or maybe you have some assignments that you need to work on. There are various things that the students can do between in the gaps of time that they have. But what we do not do is change schedules to ensure that the students do not have a space where they can independently do something on their own. We treat our students like college students as best as possible, right? And they're on this large college campus, and we encourage them and we give them the tools that they need to be successful and safe on campus to the best of their ability. So we do understand, however, that for a student that's in year 1 for the first time on campus, that it can be a very daunting schedule. It can be, scary. Sometimes you think that the students can't do it, but I already went through the supports that we do have on campus, including the peer mentor. And that's some of the stuff that the peer mentors help the students to navigate.
Crystal, can I just add two things there? So
Sure.
This does not necessarily mean that everything ends at 4 o'clock or starts at 8 a.m. This is a sample. So students can be on campus until the staff is here. So the latest that staff leaves, I believe, is between, well, sometimes they leave later, but usually the schedule usually goes between 8 and 5. It doesn't end necessarily at 4 o'clock. But while students are on campus, there's staff that is on campus to make sure that if anything comes up, that we can respond to anything that may come up. So I just wanted to kind of add that. It just doesn't mean that everything ends at 4 o'clock. Or that every student's schedule is going to look at this. And one more thing about the schedule, it's really important for parents to know. The schedule is coordination with a lot of other people's schedules. So the academic mentor times are based upon the academic mentor's availability to provide academic mentorship. So it's not, the schedule really depends on a bunch of other people, which is why we don't make changes to them, because it's very challenging to coordinate different people's schedules. And if one thing changes for one student, then it changes for the other 33. Because it has a domino effect, so that's why we don't change schedules once they're done. Sorry, Crystal.
And one other thing, we have a staff member that's on campus, I think 3 times a week until 7:30, just because she has to be there for the dorms. So we do have some late coverage.
Something else to add in terms of changing schedules, we do not change a schedule simply because a student doesn't like a class. So that's something that we want the students to understand, that it's college and you do have an opportunity to choose classes. But of course, there are some classes that are mandatory based on the area of specialization that you've chosen, right? So what we work with them is building the skills that they need to understand that, look, it's not always going to be what you like. There are some tasks that I have at my job, right? Nicole is my supervisor, and I'll explain to them that there are sometimes that tasks are assigned that I may not necessarily like, but it's a task that I have to do based on the job that I have. So you may have a class that you're attending that it may not be your favorite class, but it's a class that you must attend and complete because it's a part of the larger picture. It's a part of what it is that you need to satisfy whatever requirement it is that you do have. There is also another point I want to discuss. So we do have a majority of our students that are in Miami-Dade County, but we also do have students that are in Broward County as well. And what tends to happen is that when the student is accepted in the program, then the family struggles with a schedule because of the distance. So this is something that we want to be very open and honest in our discussion with the families to say that the schedules are the schedules, right? And the program does not provide transportation. And that is something that we remind parents when they are applying. We do not provide transportation for students. We will definitely give whatever information we have on resources in the community. And we want parents to understand that. So if there's a mandatory class that a student must take that starts at 9 a.m. or even 8 a.m. as is on this schedule, we cannot just change the class because a student lives far, right? There are different components and different things that we do take into consideration when we're building schedules. So we want families to be mindful of that ahead of time. And that is why we try to get the schedules out early so that parents can, and students, of course, can make whatever arrangements they need to make for transportation as best as possible. So that is also something I wanted to ensure that I did mention, and so that parents and families are aware. Okay, we mentioned social engagement on and off campus. I don't have to go back into that, as again, we did mention it, but the pictures that we have on the slide are a mixture of students that are in our program as well as typical students on campus that participate in activities with our students, that are in clubs with our students, engaging with our students, inviting them to different activities, supporting them in various fundraising activities, etc. So our students do participate, as I mentioned, in social activities on campus, off campus, and also with their typical peers, as well as the supports from our social mentors. And I'm actually glancing at these pictures, and none of our social mentors are in these pictures. These pictures are all either typical students or some of our students engaging with our students in some activities that they came up with. We spoke about the job shadowing versus the internship experience, or job coach that's employed by us to support our students. And just to mention as well that I did speak to the fact that we have independent living seminars. One of the things that, or one of the topics that we do focus on in those independent living seminars are topics surrounding employment. So time management, transportation, preparing for interviews, appropriate attire, resume building, applying for jobs. Did I mention time management? I'll mention it again because it's that important. Time management again, right? That's something that our students struggle with, and that's something that we do discuss in seminars. Residential experience, Maite may jump in because this is actually her wheelhouse, but we do have residential experience, which is a component of our program. So as I mentioned earlier in the presentation, our students have the opportunity to apply to stay in the dorms. It's an FIU dorm with typical FIU students residing in the dorms. This is not something that is mandatory for students, but it is something that we definitely do encourage because, as Maite said, the students that take advantage of this dorm experience and the students that are accepted to be in the dorms definitely do have an opportunity to gain way more independent experience and really do exit that program more independent than the students that did not participate in residential piece for the obvious reasons. They're living in the dorms, they're not living with the parents, and so they have to really take charge of a lot of the activities that at home they would not necessarily have to do on their own. So in order to be eligible for the program, the residential program, they must have successfully completed the first year of the program, and they must also complete and submit the FIU Embrace residential application. And this is an application that we'll send to students to let them know when it is that we've opened the application. So it's not something that we post nationally or openly. It's something that we circulate within the program because it's only applicable to the students that are in the program, to let them know that they can apply. There are supports that are available for our residential students. So we don't just send them in the dorm and just expect them to be successful, right? That's not what we're doing. So we do have staff. We have community assistants. So community assistants are student staff. So they're undergraduate students, undergraduate FIU students who are living in the dorms, not in the same room as our students, but within the same dorm as our students. And they're trained to work with our students, and they're on a rotation, right? So they're working at different times to ensure that our students are getting up and heading out and coming back in and meeting curfew. There isn't a curfew for the entire dorm, but for our students, we have implemented a curfew to ensure, of course, that our students are as safe as possible. Residential assistants, or RAs, are typical student staff that are a part of every dorm. What we've done is that we've developed a training for the RAs, or for the residential assistants, on working with persons with disabilities and general information on FIU Embrace, really getting them to know our students, etc., so that we have additional eyes and ears in the dorms, right? And our students are a part of the dorm community, and the dorm community knows who our students are, and knows our program, and knows what our program is about. Our department maintains a very good relationship with the housing department. And through this relationship, we're able to secure rooms for our students, rooms that are close to the exit. We're able to know when they're going to be scheduled, let's say fire drills or things like that. So we're able to give our students a heads up and prepare them for these activities as well. We also maintain a solid relationship with FIU's police department. So they do know the students that are in the dorms. They do know who all our students are in general, right? So that's something for me to add. But they also know the students that we have residing in the dorms and the specific rooms that our students are going to be in. In the case of an emergency, of course, that's something definitely important for FIU PD to know. In addition to that, managers in our program also operate on an on-call rotation. So as long as we have students in the dorms, we have a staff that is on call. And the rotation, I mentioned the 4 names before: Nicole, our director, you have me, senior program manager, Maite, program manager, do maintain that on-call rotation to provide support to our students in the dorms. All our students have our cell numbers. All our students know how to identify and find the community assistants. They know what rooms they're in, and our students have a sense of who it is that they're supposed to reach out to at any given time. We have specific seminars that are geared towards the students living in the dorms, and specific meetings geared towards the students living in the dorms. And we also have a program specialist that works with our students living in the dorms. And some of the skills that we're working with the students on in the dorms are, for instance, laundry, right? So we're not expecting parents to come on the weekend to pick up laundry for our students. Absolutely not. The students are living independently. So to be picking up, doing their own laundry. They're going to be learning how to make their own meals. They're going to be waking up on time, getting to classes, cleaning their own rooms, determining a schedule, right? Who cleans and who cleans when. So these are some of the things that we do work with our students on in the dorms. Maite, I'm not sure if you want to jump in. As I mentioned, this is Maite's wheelhouse, so I may have forgotten a few things. I'm going to ask Maite to jump in and provide some support here.
So one of the things that Nicole mentioned earlier was that we have a staff that works late till 7:30. That is the program specialist that Crystal has mentioned. And so, as Crystal said, in addition to the regular seminars that all students participate in, the students in the dorms participate in 3 more additional seminars with the program specialist who is in the dorms, working with them on a lot of the practical skill building of what they're learning in seminars. So like Crystal mentioned, laundry, part of the roommate agreement, which all FIU students have that live in the dorms, making the schedule of when they're going to clean, who's going to clean what. And the specialist follows up with them on that. She takes them grocery shopping. They do budgeting every week to make sure that they have money. And she helps them, grow these skills. And then they start the students who get good at some of these things quickly, like we have some students right now that are very good at cooking. And so our students have had kind of like dinners, within these dorm rooms for each other, where they all come together and they cook, because we do have something called food labs where we work with the dietetics and nutrition department to teach the students how to cook and how to, eat a nutritious meal and all those things. And so there's a lot of supports for the students in the dorms. But again, just the experience of being in the dorm forces them to make some independent decisions about what do they do with their time. One of the things that's really important to mention is that when students come into the dorm, we do an orientation with parents and students specifically for the dorm. And we ask parents to think about, even if you live across the street from FIU, to please think about as if your son or daughter was at UF 5 hours away. Please do not come to the dorms every weekend. They're not going to go home every weekend. The point of them being in the dorms is to learn how to manage their free time, to get them to start engaging and initiating socialization or things to do. And they can't do that if they go home every weekend. So the point is not for them to just be in the dorm during classes or during FIU Embrace activities, but also to be able to manage their independent time. They practice a lot of transportation skills. So our students go to social events that Crystal has mentioned before from the dorms. And so they either Uber, use STS, which is a special transportation service if they're eligible, or Lyft, or public transportation, or there's a Doral trolley that goes there. And so again, these experiences provide opportunities for the students living in the dorms to become more independent. Not that there hasn't been, sometimes where students get stuck and they might get frustrated like everything else, but we do have staff that will help them walk through those things and help them learn and keep practicing, because we know that, as long as they keep practicing those things, they're really gonna learn them really well. And just to say that everything that we do in the program is intentional, and the goal is to prepare them for the outside world after Embrace. So the way that we view our role with our students is that we only have 3 years to get them ready to become more independent and to prepare them to be in competitive and integrated employment. And so that's why from day one, we're pushing the students to be independent, to have their own opinion, to make decisions regarding even the little things, so that they can start practicing when it comes time to make the big decisions, and walking them through the thought process of things to consider when making decisions. So one of the things that comes up all the time is that our students tend to have this perception that because FIU Embrace staff is very friendly and helpful, then that means that everybody that is ever on this campus is a safe and good person. And so we talk about that a lot in seminars, because as you all know, FIU is a public institution. Therefore, it is an open campus where anybody can be on campus at any time that has no affiliation with FIU. And so we want to train our students to understand that not everybody that you meet at FIU is necessarily a good person, your friend, and we talk a lot about that in seminars, so we can guide some of the decisions that the students make, and that they don't assume that everybody at FIU is safe or their friend or good for them. And that especially is important in the dorms, because that's where they have a lot of free time. But again, Crystal did a good job of going over all of these topics. So usually we try to assign Embrace students to other Embrace students in the dorms. However, sometimes there's not, the numbers kind of don't work out. So there's three rooms to a pod in the dorm. I mean, to a space in the dorm where there'd be 3 individual rooms, and they share a small living space and a bathroom. But if we only have, like right now, we only have 2 females, then they could be assigned a typical student to live with them through housing. But then we would kind of work with the neurotypical student and our students to negotiate what the roommate agreement is, and we would facilitate those discussions and help troubleshoot any issues that may come up. And I think that's pretty much it for the dorms. I don't know if there's any questions from parents regarding the dorms. You can unmute yourselves or write something in the chat if you'd like. And again, this is the students are eligible for the dorms in years 2 and 3. This is not covered by VR. This would be an expense that the parents the families would have to cover.
Maite, if I can, I just want to share with parents that if a student is coming into the dorm, they've been accepted and you've agreed to that, not only would there be dorm cost, but each student is required to buy a meal plan, right? To ensure that they have access to meals at all times.
Thanks,
Okay,
Nicole.
thanks, Nicole. Okay, I'm not seeing any additional questions, but something to add. Maite mentioned that students that really do take advantage of the dorm experience tend to really show a lot of growth. And one of the areas that we do find that the students grow a lot in is when it comes to conflict resolution. As you can imagine, living with new persons, you tend to have a lot of little conflicts that come up. And then the students have to navigate how it is that you resolve these conflicts without calling mom and dad, who can't really assist you with a conflict in the dorms, right? And how it is that you manage the fact that you have to continue living with this person, right? So if it is that, let us say that you guys agreed that Maite is supposed to clean the bathrooms on Saturdays and Crystal is supposed to clean the bathroom on Wednesdays. And every Wednesday, Crystal doesn't clean the bathroom, and then Maite is forced to clean the bathroom on Saturdays. And how is it that you have that conversation with Crystal? And how is it that you resolve it and ensure that you guys are both able to live in the same space without arguing about it all the time? So that is something that we really have to work with the students on a lot. Budgeting as well. And if it is that you have agreed that you guys are going to split a ride on Uber, when it is that you're going weekends to see the movies, but then Maite always blows through her money because she spends all her money on food, and then I have to foot the Uber bill, right? So how is it that we resolve conflicts like that? So the students do experience a lot of growth, and these are good skills for them to have as they leave the program and they're in the workplace, for instance, or living independently after they've left home. So I'm still not seeing any additional questions in the chat. The residential piece was really the last piece or the last bit of discussion for today's open house. So I'll be sending out a series of supporting documents after the presentation to all the persons that have sent me their email addresses. It's a lot of information to process. I'm pretty sure that I'm going to be getting questions after the open house that you probably just never thought of now. Feel free, do not hesitate to send a question if it is that you have a question. The financial piece is a lot to digest. As Nicole mentioned, if it is that you need to do a specific call to kind of talk through something that's specific to your son or daughter, that's definitely fine. Just send an email and we'll make arrangements to have a call depending on who's available. So the call may be me, the call may not be with me, but it will definitely be with one of the persons that I identified as our leadership team for FIU Embrace. Thank you guys so much.
Hold on, Crystal.
Crystal, there's a question in the chat. So I'll read out the questions, and if you could answer it. Are there any plans in the near future to add any additional new course of study? For example, education certification, the DCF one we've talked about, etc. If you could answer that, and then I'll go on to the next question.
Okay, sure, no problem. So as I have mentioned earlier, we do sit and we regroup and we think about what are the needs and the demands of the students in our program. So right now we're at 10 areas of specialization. 2 years ago, we were not at 10. I think we had about 5 areas of specialization 2 years ago. So there are plans to expand. Some of the ones that we are thinking about when we started our conversations on is childcare. We do have a lot of students that are interested in doing an area of specialization in childcare. We have a few students now that are working on their DCF certification. So the childcare area of specialization is definitely one that we're thinking of. And now we've had a few students that are talking to us about politics, right? So we have some students that are interested in having politics as an area of specialization. And that is something that Nicole, Maite, myself are going to have to sit and talk about. So we definitely do continuously work on expanding these areas based on the demands of the community, the demands of the job world, right? What it is that we're seeing out there as being needs, and also requests that we're getting from students and parents. So I hope that answers the question. We also remain open to answer questions and to facilitate meetings if it is that there's a person who wasn't able to join but would like to reach out to speak to us about the program information.
So the last thing I would say to that is that if you know of anyone who would like to get more information about the program, please let us know. We've oftentimes gone to organizations just to meet with them and done one-on-one private kind of discussions and help them identify students that this program would be appropriate for, and in some cases even help them with the application, etc. So we're open to that as well.
And just to add to what Nicole mentioned, there are times that schools will reach out to me, for instance, and they'll say that they have a group of parents of, let's say, 12th graders who are interested in hearing about the program. They're going to have a parent meeting and they're asking if somebody from the team can speak to that specific group of parents. And absolutely, that's something that we'll definitely facilitate. Understand, with COVID, not all schools may be open to having persons come into the school, but we are more than willing to do it via Zoom as well. So that's definitely something that we're willing to facilitate. Schools, parent groups, organizations, as Nicole mentioned, anyone that really needs additional information on our program or services, or to seek clarification on information that they've already received. Are there any additional questions, Maite? Okay, great. So since there are no questions, I'm going to go ahead and wrap up. I want to tell everyone, thank you so much for joining us to really take the time to listen and learn more about our program. Thank you, everyone, and have a great rest of your weekend.